space. It's a new frontier. Why don't I wreck it? I've destroyed the Western. I have made fun of the horror genre. Silent movies have fallen under my axe. What haven't I spoofed? And I said, oh, I know. I know. Space. I am the keeper of a power known throughout the universe.
The Force?
No. The Schwartz.
I think Spaceballs being a spoof of science fiction movies, it makes it particularly poised to be memorable.
When Mel Brooks does a satire on a famous story, which he did with Spaceballs, it's very close to the original story, but it just takes a sort of a left turn so that it just becomes a little silly.
Well, I think the space genre was ripe for satire. No one had tapped into it yet. So you had characters easily identifiable. All rise in the presence of Dark Helmet.
I sent the script to Lucas. I said, if there's anything that offends you, he called and he said, please, you know, I saw Blazing Saddles, I've seen Young Frankenstein. I trust your judgment.
I can't breathe in this thing!
As a matter of fact, ILM, which is a George Lucas company, did all our post-production film work.
Yogurt!
Hello, boys!
I think it's a spoof on Star Wars. I think. Are we through?
You cannot spoof anything that you really don't love.
There's so much product out there.
Laugh your butt off at something that we all know very well.
It's not hard to make satire of that stuff because it's bigger than life.
There's a very, very long spaceship that you can have fun with. I mean, it's almost like the beginning of a porn movie.
You had all those easily identifiable elements with those products. You know, you had the princess in distress, and you had aliens, strange-looking aliens. And, of course, you had good guys and bad guys.
I remember his approach to all the characters had a great deal of affection, you know, so there was never any attempt to really, like, have a character just be kind of a fall guy or something, or stupid just for stupid's sake, you know, and I think that side of it, I could see why he would say that, you know, you have to love what you spoof.
I think in order to take the energy and the time and all that goes into, like, the making of a film like Spaceballs, you must love it. You have to love it.
I've come to love Star Wars, Star Trek, except for Star Crap. I won't say Star Crap.
Ludicrous speed! Go!
Peter Donnan was so great in supervising all our special effects.
There was no question in Mel's mind that he wanted to do everything as well as or better than Star Trek the TV series, Star Wars.
So everything was very real, very exciting, very space-ish, and I made it Jewish. I just tweaked it a little. A funny effect is really the real effect with some extension.
Everything does have to be as good, if not better, because you better show us that you're expert and you know what you're doing, because we're fans of the first one.
We actually set out to do really, really first-class work.
Perfect.
You were wonderful.
Thank you.
Let's do it again. Just do it a little better.
Mel is a very curious guy. He had seen Ruthless People, the first movie I did. It's just a small part in it, and he liked it a lot. And then he and Anne came to this theater center, and I was doing a production of this very bizarre Belgian play.
I actually went to see a play called Barabbas, and Bill Pullman was playing Barabbas, and he was great. He had really serious acting chops.
He liked the performance and talked to me afterwards and then hired me.
When I went to meet with Mel, I remember thinking that you know, I wasn't going to get this, I wasn't going to be right, and I wasn't, because I didn't think of myself as big slapstick, broad comedy.
And I had just seen Robbie Reiner's The Sure Thing, and she was terrific in it.
But he said playing it real or playing it straight is half of the comedy.
I know these space bums, they're all alike. Fat, ugly,
buck-toothed, knock-kneed,
fierce-willing pigs.
It was a social thing that I met Mel Brooks. He said to me, you know, you're not fat, but you have a fat man's face. We'll just pad you and everything because your face has got the right look for it. He said, would you want to do it? Yeah. I said, gee, that would be great.
I know very little about dot matrix and Spaceballs because I was called in as kind of a Band-Aid person. I was called in after Spaceballs was done. It was my voice that was used. Lorene Yarnell actually plays dot matrix.
She could move, she could do these robotic moves, great with her body, but she didn't have the right comic voice.
I got a call from Mel, and he said, how would you like to come in and write some jokes and do this character? And I said, great. So I knew nothing about, I didn't even know what the movie was about.
That was my Virgin alarm. It's programmed to go off before you do.
Before Spaceballs came up, I was doing Hill Street Blues, so it was quite a shift. I get a call one day from my agent saying, Mel Brooks wants to see you.
Every spaceship needs kind of an accountant mind, you know?
When Mel called me to talk to me about Spaceballs, he wanted me to come in and work with Rick. So here I had Mel again, and I had the potential of working with Rick, who I was a big fan of.
Fire a warning shot across her nose.
Rick was what you call a great pain in the ass. That is, he'd always finish a take, and he'd say, let's do it again in this next take. Why did you say this, and I say this, and you say this? He was always right.
Careful, you idiot! I said across her nose, not up it!
And he was a really, I say pain, but he was a pleasure to work with, because anybody who's so giving and loving and creative is very valuable.
What's his name?
That is his name, sir. Asshole. Major Asshole.
And his cousin?
He's an asshole too, sir. Gun is made first class, Philip Asshole.
How many assholes we got on this ship anyhow? Go!
There were a lot of assholes. All the assholes were good. Everybody who played an asshole was wonderful.
I knew it. I'm surrounded by assholes.
Rick also suggested very early, when I was talking to him on the phone about the part, that John Candy would be a great barf. And I think he called John.
Hi!
Who are you?
Barf!
Not in here, mister. This is a Mercedes.
The spaceship crashes, and he gets caught, he goes back, and he ad-libbed, oh, that's going to leave a mark.
Yeah, well, normally oh, that's gonna leave a mark.
And that was so, you cannot buy that.
My name is John, no, I'm kidding. Take two. My name is Peter Donnan, and I was the visual effects supervisor on Spaceballs. I had done a little bit of work on Star Trek, the TV series, the original TV series. I had worked for the trailer company that had done the trailers on Star Wars, so I was familiar with the work that existed and sort of what the benchmark was.
My name is Nick McLean. I was the director of photography on Spaceballs. We discuss angles, but nothing about film or looks. His main focus was it funny? He told me, Nick, comedy is bright. In other words, you have to see the people. You have to see their expressions.
He was admirably professional in every setup.
And he says, also, I'm Jewish and I pay for that wall back there. I want to see that wall back there.
He's very careful with Daphne Zuniga, who was Princess Vespa. He said, you know, a girl's got to be beautiful. And I said, I agree. That's why we go to the movies. Men got to be good looking, girls got to be beautiful. I never yelled at him for taking a little extra time to shadow her face properly and light her. As good a cinematographer as anybody could ever want. And good-natured. The only thing I didn't like about Nick was that he wore sandals.
What?
I'm Ben Nye. I was the makeup designer on Spaceballs. I was introduced to Spaceballs through John Candy and working with John Candy. I think he kind of went to whoever through his agents, and however that works, had me assigned to the movie. It seemed like a great opportunity to do some interesting makeup, so I was happy to be department head.
Do I get this at the end of the movie? Do I get to keep this?
Yes, sir.
It was a really joyously good experience on a professional level. I mean, we had Harold Michelson, who had been Alfred Hitchcock's storyboard artist. We had Nicky McLean as our director of photography, who had probably been, if not the greatest, one of the greatest camera operators was ever in Hollywood. Don Feld, a fabulous costume designer. Conrad Buff, who went on to cut True Lies. Terry Marsh, certainly a great production designer who had worked with David Lean on Dr. Zhivago. We just had the cream of the crop all the way through, and everybody was, you know, sort of joyously contributing to this experience that Mel had set us down the road on.
When you do a big budget movie, and this was a well-financed studio film, one of the wonderful things is that they're going to create these sets. They did a wonderful job of creating the Spaceballs world for us as actors.
Terrence Marsh, everything he designed, even the Winnebago or Princess Vespa's quarters, everything was correct and then just stretched out of shape, just a little bit, so that you'd be aware of the comic frame around everything. And it was great to shoot at MGM, one of the greatest studios. The gate, driving in, little goosebumps. Hello, I'm Mel Brooks, you're MGM. This is all good.
Wizard of Oz was shot in that Soundstage 39, where we shot a lot of our kind of Wizard of Oz scenes. And the fact that it was all going to be torn down and gone after we were out of there made it feel like it was kind of an important movie, even though it was kind of a silly movie, you know, kind of light entertainment. But it had this kind of sense of this was going to be the last chapter of a piece of history.
How did I do it? What did we do? Well, first of all, we did 267 shots. And I had long discussions with Mel, with Terry Marsh, with Ezra Swerdlow, who's one of the producers, about funny effects. And obviously, you know, a flying Winnebago is like a funny idea. The world's longest star cruiser is a funny idea. But the whole premise for all of it was more about making it so that they were amused by the ideas, not necessarily making the work crude.
The miniatures and the world of the miniatures was amazing.
For the bridge, we had what at the time was one of the largest blue screens anybody had ever attempted. It was 35 feet high and 135 feet wide.
There was this theory, and I don't know if it really was true or not, that the blue screen hurt your eyes.
They scared the hell out of us. They said, don't look at the blue screen. They gave us yellow glasses.
We had special sunglasses.
So we all were wearing yellow glasses. Turned out that that's a myth. I mean, it didn't mean anything.
When you act with a blue screen, it's literally that, a blue screen. And so a lot of your acting school training comes back.
That's what a good actor is. He acts to nothing.
The hardest thing was imagining all the stuff that was going on.
Eventually, there's going to be a spaceship there.
You just throw all pride out the window and you just react. And then you pray that they're going to stick in the right image at the right moment, because if they mess it up, you could look really stupid.
We had a wonderful costume designer, Don Feld. D-O-N, one word, Don Feld. Je suis Don Feld. Who the hell are you? And he was a genius.
A Hollywood legend. And so I went in and just was putty in his hands.
I was amazed at Don Feld's original sketches. And I said, don't go any further. Just nail these. Get these into costumes. And we stayed very close to his original designs. He was very creative in making a helmet that could strap on to Rick Moranis, where he could actually walk around with it. And it wouldn't hit the floor, it wouldn't throw him over it. He created the balls for Spaceballs, the ball helmets, and the wedding dress. And he was just wonderful with textures and with space elements. Everything would shine and be just a little too spacey, you know? He was a little spacey himself.
In real life, I have very little hair, and as you can see. But they gave me a wig. You know, it was nice for a bald man to all of a sudden have all his hair. I liked it.
It was the hair we were very concerned about. The ears ride so high, dog's ears are up here. So mine are blocked off down here. I give myself big sideburns here on the side and a DA in the back with a ponytail, so I try to be a very cool dog.
John wanted to have some appliance on his face to make him look like a dog. Mel said, we don't want to cover John Candy's face. We're paying all this money to see this guy who's really funny. He's got this funny face, and no, we really don't want to cover it up.
So I said, what about if we give you doggy ears and maybe a patch?
Funny.
We started out with the desert, and that was the first shooting I did, anyway, was out in Yuma, Arizona.
If you do more than one take in sand, you've ruined the pristine quality of the sand. So, I mean, it would drive us nuts. We had to get a blower, or we had to get a sand broom. Worse than that was lunch. There was nowhere in near Yuma to eat lunch.
It was hot and dusty.
I felt really badly for Lorraine Yarnell.
My God, Lorraine Yarnell had a trudge in this C-3PO mock-up.
She had a real tough time, probably more difficult than most, because she couldn't actually see where she was going.
And it must have been easily 120 degrees in that thing.
We'd have to keep opening the mask so that she could breathe, and she'd just be dripping with sweat. I mean, it was so hot out there. This poor woman, I think, lost a lot of weight and water weight. I mean, and she was tiny to start with.
She was a trooper. She was a real trooper.
I'll tell you the costume that I really enjoyed more than mine and was jealous of was Rick's costume, because of course Rick had the big helmet.
Everybody got that?
Rick would try and break me up just before we would do a take, but he'd drop the visor.
Never have that damn thing down in front of me.
So he could laugh his little tuchus off, and no one knew. And I'm ruining the take because I'm laughing, and all I see are his little knees shaking a little bit. That's all because his helmet was down. I wanted that helmet. I wanted that.
The people in the picture all have terrific sense of humor, and there was a lot of kidding around going on.
We had a lot of laughs making this film.
Sitting there with John Candy, who just goes off, and you're crying and you're cracking up, and makeup just keeps touching you up, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, speed, rolling, and you're like, no, this isn't fair. I
thought Mel was going to get mad. I thought, you know, costing a lot of film here. We keep ruining takes. But Mel was laughing harder than anybody.
I forgave them. I forgave them all. I love laughter on a set.
And that's why I think Spaceballs works. We laughed more making that film than people laughed watching it. As much as they laughed, yeah, it was enormously funny and satisfying for people to work on that film. And that's Mel. Adjectives to describe Mel Brooks.
Good kisser.
My best friend.
Wacky.
Very funny.
Good kisser.
Concise.
Hilarious.
Wonderful enthusiasm.
Creative.
Lustrous.
My lover.
Slimy.
Bizarre.
Tall, dark, and handsome.
He's a very short man. Good-natured.
Brilliant.
Somewhat mean.
Direct.
Knowledgeable.
Burps too much.
Great creativity.
Erudite.
Avuncular.
Insane.
Compassionate.
But a good insane.
Perfect.
I'm always the best. Well, I was the shortest. He's very short.
Mel Brooks is everybody's favorite uncle. He's your uncle because he genuinely cares about you. He's involved in your life. You're part of a family when you work with Mel.
I like people. I give them advice whether they need it or not. Don't carry it that way. Hold it on your hip. You won't get a hernia. I help everybody.
It's great working with Mel. On the set, he's a very funny man, but he's very nice, very serious, though, on the set.
As a force of nature, Mel Brooks can be intimidating. But all in the nature of kind of really, let's not miss a moment of opportunity. Let's not be lazy. Let's not be self-congratulatory. You know, afterwards, I've looked back on it and I realized how much I learned from the movie. You know, it's about comedy, especially comedy in film as opposed to theater. And You know, he was so rigorous. That was something I really respect him for.
You know, a lot of people think I'm their favorite uncle because I appeared on television in Mad About You, and I played Uncle Phil. And when I played Uncle Phil, I played him with his hair up like this. And I would talk with a little Jewish accent and a voice, and I would be very energetic, and they liked that character.
Mel Brooks, I walked in thinking, oh, it's going to be working for a comic. And I walked out 8 hours later with such respect for him. The man is absolutely brilliant, knows his work, knows his background. He's wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
I remember very specifically how he interacted with me. Bring it up, make it bigger. If we have to sit and wait for you to find your motivation, we're going to be out of the theater.
And I yell at my actors, make it big, make it grand. I like it to be larger than life, because an audience wants things to happen in a movie that could never happen to them. They want big, gorgeous, beautiful things. They can't dance like Fred Astaire, but they can dream of dancing with Ginger Rogers like Fred Astaire.
Mel, as a director, paid attention to everything that went on. Mel used to say, no styrofoam cups on my sets.
Never play this again.
Because in every single movie that he had ever had, somewhere in his mind, in the background, in some scene, there was a styrofoam cup that some grip, some electrician, some set decorator, some painter, some prop man had himself a cup of coffee and set it there.
That's the curse of allowing the crew to use white styrofoam cups. You'll always see them in the periphery of a movie.
So we had paper cups. So Mel was involved in everybody's job.
Mel's way of working involves a lot of improvisation.
No matter what preparation you do, no matter what rehearsals you have, it all changes as soon as you're in front of a camera.
He was really good about letting people experiment and explore.
It's not always the most important thing whether that improvisation works or not for that specific scene. What's important to the actor is that it's indicative of the kind of freedom you have. And the best part of that freedom is if it's not working, he's going to have some very specific ideas on how you do it.
If the director realizes what the writer had in mind and the actors can nail it, that's a lot better than improvisation.
Do it like this.
You kind of go to the set kind of wondering what the heck's going to happen sometimes. Usually Mel got his way.
Mel likes to do a lot of takes.
Many, many takes.
10, 12, 15 takes.
Lots and lots and lots of takes.
He's not cheap about it. He uses up a lot of film.
A lot of actors get anxious about getting line readings from directors. Mel gives you line readings. Sometimes. I loved it because it was intimidating because he did it funnier than you were going to do it. That was the only problem with it.
When he gives you one, that's perfect. You should put it in your pocket and keep it there. Don't forget it because it doesn't miss.
The key to my character, and Mel and I talked about this in the beginning, Colonel Sanders is a second banana, which is a term most people understand from vaudeville days. You know, you set up the comedic character as a second banana. You bring the jokes to him on a tray. That's what I always think about when I remember Spaceballs, was how much fun it can be to be a second banana.
Hello, Lone Star.
Hello, Vinny. What do you want?
It's not what I want. It's what he wants.
Pizza the Hut!
Richard Caron played Pizza the Hut. He was inside this huge canvas type thing that had all this actual cheese pizza over it. And to keep the pizza hot, they had a wire going through it. And it was bubbling. We'd shoot a scene, and that's okay, we got to get ready for another take. And all of a sudden, I hear, it's smoke! I look down, and he's smoking. Smoke is coming out from the wire that was heating up the pizza. I said, Mel, fire! They pick up this whole thing, and he comes out, he's all, ah. Mel says, come on, one more take!
Mel played Yogurt, and when we were doing the scenes with Yogurt, he would say, okay, everyone, you know, get ready, set, speed, rolling, action. He'd do his thing.
The kids love this one.
And he'd say, cut, perfect, brilliant, move it on, you know. Of course, after like I tried that with my takes once after the end. He'd say, cut. I go, perfect, brilliant, move on. He'd say, perfect, let's do it again.
And for my part, I was, you know, young kid, and Mel wanted me to shut up all the time. But always with affection.
If you just aim for the place you're going, you'll fall short of it. You've got to aim beyond it to reach it. It's never as good as you want it to be. But then again, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. But you got to give it everything you got. You don't go to work, you go to art. It's your vision, it's your love, it's your hope, it's your heart. You give your soul to the film, and you hope that it lands on its feet and that people, you know, will enjoy it.
I don't think I knew at the time that it was going to be what it was.
All of a sudden, the last 6 months, I have kids from about 9 to about 15 coming up to me. They don't mention 8 is enough at all. They don't even know about it. It's all they talk, you King Roland from Spaceballs. In other words, that film has become a cult thing with young kids. They love it.
College campuses, dorm rooms, they watch it 8, 10 times, you know, on a weekend. And then I thought, wow, this movie is, of all the movies that I've done, really like a virus got in people's brains and they couldn't get rid of it.
It's all about the timing or the era or publicity, whatever. But people that come up to me now today, that's what I love. I mean, I never would have dreamed that all these years later, you know, I'd be signing Princess Vespa pictures or autographs or being reminded of lines that I had in the movie.
I know that in my area, people look at it 10 and 15 years later and say, you know what? The work that we did then in 1986 and 1987 holds up today.
A lot of kids, little kids who see it, have no regard for its satiric aspects. They don't care that it's making fun of anything. They like the story, and that's what good satire is.
It's become a big cult film for children. Kids to this day grab me on the street and say, oh, Spaceballs, Spaceballs. And I always say, no, just my voice. And then I oh, hell with it. Yeah, Spaceballs.
Hang on, Buffo, we're gonna make space tracks.
My biggest video sales, you would think that it would be Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. But the two movies are Robin Hood, Men in Tights, and Spaceballs. And that's because of young people. Kids love it. You know, and adults get it. The experience was great. We had a wonderful bunch of folks. Talented people, great cast. It was a great experience. So, may the Schwartz be with you. Beginnings, Tom, beginnings. At the time, in my back pocket, I had an outline, or an idea anyway, for a movie, and it was called Spaceballs.
It wasn't called Spaceballs originally, but it was...
What did we call it originally?
Originally, when you called me about it, first of all, we met around 1970, and you said, you know, you've got to work on a movie with me.
Yeah, and then 10 years later...
Would you like to? And I said, yeah, here's my phone number. So for 14 years, I sat by the phone. Finally, Mel called. He called. But anyway, it was called... When you first started, it was called Planet Moron.
Planet Moron. I remember that.
Yeah, and then we were meeting and we were talking and we had started doing an outline of Planet Moron and we heard that there was some kind of British low-budget movie called Morons from Outer Space. So we said, oh, we've got to get another title. Yes. So it was with Ronnie Graham. You and I were having lunch at 20th Century Fox, and you said, well, you can't use Planet Moron. But you said, I think the first word should be space anyway.
Space anything.
Space anything. So let's go through the alphabet. And
then I think I spilled something on me, and I said, balls. And then Ronnie said, that's it, Spaceballs.
So there was
the
basic idea.
Something like
that.
No,
the idea was, we'll go through the alphabet. We'll start at A, we'll work and see where we're in space. So we're in space A, Spaceballs, you said.
Right,
that's at the end. We don't have to go to C.
Yeah, and then we thought of, Spaceballs would be cute because they would all wear these balls as helmets, white helmets.
Which they did do.
And they would be aggressive, which would work into the title. And then we came up with a great idea for a premise for a space movie. At the time, Star Wars had been out 10 years, and they were Maybe there were 2 Star Wars by then.
3 even, yeah.
It was the only genre I hadn't covered, right?
That's about it.
I covered the West in Blazing Saddles, the horror film with Young Frankenstein, and it was like an untouched, beautiful, virgin field for me to soil.
Mel goes back, you know, from the show of shows, working with people in a room, a bunch of writers, and whoever shouts the loudest gets a line.
Yeah.
And we got into that spirit of that kind of talk writing, and the girl would write something down and say, how about, and we said, do we say that? No, cut that out, you know.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, page by page it was built that way. You like to start at the very beginning, scene 1, and work through.
Yeah, I don't like outlines, really.
Yeah.
I sometimes work from outlines, but I don't like outlines. I like to get a sense of where the story should go.
Right.
Start at the beginning and get very detailed and very busy immediately, which is not the normal process for writing. To me, nothing works unless the audience really understands the premise. So in the early scenes, literally the first scene, and I could teach this, I could teach it with the producers, because when Bialystok meets Bloom, you get the premise. Bloom is a little accountant. Bialystok is a failed producer. He's done nothing but failures. Bloom says, you know, casually, he says, you know, you can make more money with a flop than you could with a hit.
How?
Yeah. That how
is the whole play.
And then we take the time right at the beginning to explain in detail. If you raise a lot more money than you need, and you write or produce a flop, then the IRS and your investors don't care because they've lost their money.
Right.
But you've got to raise 100 times, actually 1,000%, right? Was that in the producers? It's 1,000%?
Yeah, 1,000%.
So exposition is critical, because without information, it's just a series of picaresque or comedy adventures. And sometimes those things work and sometimes they don't. But with information.
Well, in Spaceballs, we begin with the information about that the Spaceballs are running out of air.
What's our plot?
Well, it's simple. Spaceballs have used up all of their precious air.
These are bad guys.
And these are bad guys.
They're aggressors.
And there's a beautiful big planet. Planet Druidia has enough air.
Planet Druidia.
Druidia. They're going to steal Planet Druidia's air, and there's 10,000 years of great air, fresh air, and the Planet Druidia is locked in some kind of sealed shield that you have to get the combination to. So they're searching for this combination, which later turns out to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the secret combination.
I know. And President Scrooge, who I play, says, wow. Instead of saying, what a dumb, stupid combination, it says, wow, what a coincidence. I have that same combination on my luggage. So he's an asshole. But anyway, it all works.
He's a spaceball and an
But what I'm
asshole.
saying is that we work detail in a detail sense from the beginning, because the beginning carries most of the explanation or the exposition or the storyline. And
So
without
they know
that,
what you're talking about.
and without that, you're lost. But if you have a very strong little plot to begin with, then you can go astray or go awry, as Bobby Burns would say.
Right, but we have
come back.
we have Colonel Sanders tell us all to Dark Helmet in the first scene in the spaceship, and then Dark Helmet turns to the audience and says, "Did you get that?"
Yes.
After he's done about 3 sentences of exposition.
Exposition is critical.
Yeah.
And without exposition, it's as old-fashioned as cavemen who have had a hunt, and maybe they lost Moishi because the great big bear that they were trapping to eat stepped on his balls and killed him, and so they tell about this around the
fire,
campfire.
yeah.
And then Og went so and so, and Moog went this way, but Moishi got under the and it got his balls crushed. And, and they all laugh. Yeah. But that's telling the story. It goes back to telling the story of the day. In a repast of cooked bear meat or something.
But what we found in Spaceballs, and what you did in a lot of other pictures, we make the exposition funny.
We got caught up in the fairy tale aspect, didn't we?
We kept
and we actually made more of a fairy tale, more of a kind of Disney-ish
Right.
With Dick Van Patten becoming this kind of
Right, in the
Disney-ish king, you know.
exactly in the kind of idyllic world of planet Duridia, as opposed to the outer space world. They didn't have that in Star Wars.
Why did we say Druidia?
We were working that she could say she was Druish.
Ah,
right. And so
all we need is a Druish princess.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so we worked. That's why we said Druidia. I was wondering because it should have been Arcadia. Which
or whatever. Yeah, it could have been, but Druidia was really good. And it's the Druids. It's sort of like an old.
The Druids are an old Celtic myth or something. Right?
So it fit into the romance of it all.
And we had somebody that she didn't want to marry.
Oh, right.
She had a
the bored prince.
The bored prince.
Visita mi
bored
canal.
prince. Yeah.
So she got into her. Was it? We called it a Mercedes.
We called it Mercedes, right? Fully loaded.
Fully loaded Mercedes.
She took off in the Mercedes.
Right. And escaped, and then we wrote a nice little story, as I remember, watching it again. That Lone Star is called by the king and says, "I'll give you." Anything if you save my daughter, and then immediately starts bargaining, you know. And at the end he says, "Well, if you could, if you could get back the Mercedes spaceship, that would be nice too."
Right,
you know.
right.
That's an old grandmother story. You're not getting a spaceship back. Let me explain.
Oh yeah.
There's an old Jewish grandmother on a beach.
Mm-hmm.
It's a classic little, and she's walking with her little grandson, and they walk too close to the ocean, and suddenly a huge wave tears the little grandson from her hand and takes him into the sea, and he's lost. She can't find him. He's gone. He's gone into the sea, and he doesn't surface, and she crashes to her knees on the beach, and she says, "Oh, God, please, please, I'll do anything. I'll send my little grandson back to me. Send my little grandson. He's such a nice boy. Please save him for me. Oh, God, oh, God." And suddenly, and in answer to her prayers, the next wave, plop! The little boy goes flying back from that wave onto the beach again. Perfectly fine. Takes his grandmother's hand and begins walking again, and she says, "Oh, God, thank you, Lord, thank you." By the way, he had a little red cap. So if you spot that, you know.
Right.
So I mean, so that was the genesis of the Dick Van Patten joke. By the way, she had a little Mercedes, you know, fully loaded. If we could find that one too, we'd get it back, you know.
Right.
So I mean, what we're saying is that there are roots, you know. Very little is completely original, you know. But writing anything is like little bits, tiny little bits of coral. They're infinitesimal at the beginning. You can't hardly see what coral is made of. But you give it a couple of 100,000 years, maybe a couple of million years, and suddenly you've got Hawaii. I mean, there's a mountain, there's an island. Yeah. So jokes are built on folk tales and, you know.
Or just little observations. I mean, in Spaceballs, there's a door that says, "No unauthorized personnel allowed to enter." Or authorized.
Right. Yeah, we just went a little too far.
A little
right?
further.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody could.
We enjoyed wrying that.
That kind of joke is.
I enjoy writing with Tom because he's a very funny guy. Everybody thinks it's myth. It's a myth. Everybody thinks, well, Tom, he's the Irishman, you know, and Mel is the crazy Jew belly comic, you know, belly laughter, and he does. Not true. It's not true. Tom comes up with very funny belly laugh jokes. And I come up once in a while with some very good exposition, or some very good structure, you know.
The smartest jokes from Mel are usually intellectual.
Please, really. You're right, but please,
right,
please.
But you know, the little references to Dostoevsky and stuff like that people don't even realize.
Well, we do it for ourselves, you know.
Well, we do it for ourselves.
It doesn't hurt anything if they don't get it.
Yeah.
However, every once in a while, we will think something, you know, works on paper, and then you play it and you read it, and you know. And it's flat as a pancake. It doesn't work. And then either you say, shoot it and we'll cut it later, or you say, let's break for 5 minutes and see, you know, stop the cameras rolling and see if we can rescue it.
On Spaceballs, we were all there, Ronnie Graham and Mel directing, and we would stand around, we would look at all the takes on the monitor and then talk.
Yeah. Ronnie Graham was the third part of the triumvirate, the writing triangle. And Ronnie Graham was a bit of a genius. And he was a nervous wreck and a bit of a pain in the ass. And he'd make a lot of trouble.
He was our pain in the ass. He was fun.
But we loved him, and we miss him. I don't believe in an ever after. I really don't. I think when you die, it's just quiet, you know. But if there is an ever after, if there is a heaven, then certainly Ronnie Graham, you know, God would certainly got him there to amuse him, you know.
Very witty, very
funny, very witty, adorable. I met him first when Ronnie Graham and I met when I was in Philadelphia doing a show for one of Eddie Cantor's daughters, for Marilyn Cantor. The name of the show, it was a review called Curtain Going Up. And in that review, I wrote a sketch called Of Fathers and Sons. Again, it's kind of a takeoff
I know that sketch.
of Turgenev, but it was really a satire of Death of a Salesman. And Ronnie Graham and Leonard Sillman, it was Leonard Sillman's New Faces of 1952 that was being done.
Right.
Saw this crazy sketch, and they liked it. And with very few changes, we were dying, and we were never going to get out of Philadelphia, but they were on their way to New York. So I asked Marilyn, you know, is it all right if we take the sketch over to Sillman? She said, fine. And so I met Ronnie Graham, who wrote most of the material for New Faces of 1952.
I know he wrote the opening song.
He wrote the opening song, and he wrote many songs, Penny Candy, and he wrote Miss Logan for Robert Clary. And I fell in love with Ronnie, and I said, this guy is good, and he thought I was good. And then, so we were doing New Faces of 1952, and it was a hit. It was actually a very big hit on Broadway. But everybody waited for Eartha Kitt, because she was the big star.
Right.
And everybody waited for Paul Lynde and Alice Ghostley and all these people that were in New Face of 52. Nobody waited for Ronnie Graham. And he was the last one to come out of the stage door. But I'd wait for him every night so we could have a beer and talk. And he would do this crazy thing. He would push the stage door open and say, give me a break. I got to live too, you know. You're human beings just like I am. Get away from me. Get away. You know, he'd make him believe there were 1,000 autograph fans, you know. He'd make believe for 10 minutes and then we'd go have a drink, you know, every night. And he was a delicious, wonderful, adorable, funny guy. And
for a number of years he wrote MASH.
He did write. He wrote MASH with Larry
He was a good, solid comedy writer.
We'll miss him, and he is the third missing writer.
He was Spaceballs.
On Spaceballs, we want you to know about. He was a terrific actor, and he did little bits in many movies. In Spaceballs, he played a space priest for us.
He did the wedding.
And he did the wedding, and he was very, you'll see for yourself, he's very, very funny.
By the way, I'm in Spaceballs for about 11 seconds.
Okay, Tom, where are you in Spaceballs?
When they return to planet Druidia, and she rushes back to the king, there's the king's minister is standing there in a long gown from the Camelot costume set. Stood there all day in about 100-degree heat in that big thing. That was my big moment.
Did you wear a hat?
I wore a hat.
Yeah.
And I'm on camera. You promised me this shot. I remember, Mel. I'm on camera with my own close-up for about 10 seconds.
I try to cut it out.
It had nothing to do with the
I try to cut it out, but your children were tugging at
their tears.
My legs. And they wouldn't let me walk. And they said, please leave Daddy in the movie.
It's my little Hitchcock moment.
So you're in.
Yeah, I'm in.
Forever and ever, if you buy the DVD of Spaceballs.
Look for this face.
Look for the minister.
The minister. Just in the last reel, I guess, somewhere. What
makes you want to work with other writers? And even after having done a job with them, done a movie with them, what makes you continue to work with them, you know, because often it's a very emotional relationship, and writers it's like a marriage, and you do have squabbles, and you do have terrible quarrels, and for you to go on and do another project, and Tom and I have done many together, betrays a modicum of mutual affection and respect.
Well, I have such huge admiration for you, Mel.
I have
incredible.
too.
And right,
for me,
but but you know, and what the great thing about working with you is that when I come in the morning, I know that somewhere during the day you're going to say something so funny I'm going to fall down on the floor.
Believe me, it's life or death when you're writing, and, you know, and these movies come out, and if they don't make any money, you don't work again. So it's...
Well, you spend hours and hours. It's true. In the last few years, I spent more time with you than with my wife, practically. We're always together.
Well, mostly in bed. I know you don't sleep with your wife, but you love hugging me. No, we're kidding. But the truth is...
You know, 8 hours a day.
The truth is that when you're a writer yourself, and you're directing, and I directed a lot of movies, I like the writers on the set, I like the writers near me, close to me, and I like the writers actually arguing or protesting or voting on a scene. And years ago it was very difficult because we didn't have the little television camera that
which makes a big difference,
recorded the scene. Now you do a scene and there's a television camera attached to your normal camera, and it records the scene, and then we all sit around and we see for ourselves whether or not what we intended is working, or whether or not it stinks, or we have to do it again, or and the only, I'm not interested in no offense, I'm not interested in the cameraman's opinion ever, or the assistant director's opinion ever. I'm not interested in anybody on the set's opinion of the art of the scene, but I do bow to the opinions of my fellow writers, because they had a vision, they had a dream in their minds, they knew a projection of what it should be, and if it's there, they vote yes, and if it isn't there, we do it again. So that's I'm a little too honest. I want you to trim this so that if I sound arrogant and stupid, and you think I'm hurting any feelings, leave it in.
It's back and forth. There is a kind of shadow marriage in a writing collaboration when you spend many hours together. We never did. We always talked about doing another Spaceballs, and another full movie.
Well, we do have a title.
We have the title in the movie.
What's the title?
Yoda says, "See you again, God willing, in Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money."
The Search for More Money.
Right.
Now that's a good title.
Yeah, right.
Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money.
Right. And we, of course, in Spaceballs, we have all the big merchandising.
Yeah. We were very brave. I'm surprised that we weren't, that the industry didn't come down on our heads for making fun of them,
merchandising.
For telling the truth about merchandising being more important than the art of the movie.
Yoda pulls out the favorite little toy, the flamethrower, but the kids love this one.
Merchandising. The kids love this one. Yeah. I see on your left elbow, down below your left elbow, is Greg, sitting there like an elf, waiting to ask some kind of, to move on to other aspects.
So you mean this conversation is just the two of us?
No, it's not.
Greg?
There are cameras here.
Oh.
And there are all kinds of Gentiles and things and olives, and there's all kinds of stuff around here,
Who knew that?
Yeah.